Personal Dowsing History. By Dr. Arthur Bailey, former B.SC president. Abstracted from his talk to the 1969 B.SC Congress. Where are we going? If you look at the history of dowsing, I think you will find it started off by searching for minerals and then for water. This, in fact, is how I started, and I have a hole in my garden 10 feet deep, still steadily going downwards, in which one day, I hope to strike the stream which I think is at 20 feet. This was my first experience at messing with depthing, and I used the Bishop's rule, but discovered afterwards that not only do I get a sideways reaction equal to depth, but one also halfway between this point and the stream. This originally led me to think the depth was 10 feet, instead of 20 feet. This shows how one can be misled by accepting other people's theories and ideas too closely. To some extent you've got to work out your own rules. Dowsing for water was the first thing, but what next? You say I'm a dowser, but who wants wells in my part of the world? Not very many people, and in any case, they come under the Water Resources Act. However, after the dowser has learnt how to find water, he eventually discovers it is possible to locate almost anything, and this is how the art tends to spread out sideways. I went on to find a water stop tap by following the pattern of the pipe. Land drains were the next things with which I became involved, and found these to be frightfully difficult, and I met with varying degrees of success. I don't know how many of you have found this to be so, and perhaps it is because they are made of clay and are usually sunk in a predominantly clay soil. One tends to start on the easy things first, and after these experiences I ran out of things to do, and sat down to think what next. So I started to look at the medical side of dowsing, which is rather like map dowsing, on the lunatic fringe. As soon as you mention anything like this to most orthodox people, they immediately say this is unreasonable. But, of course, dowsing in the first place, is unreasonable, looked at on a straightforward reasoning basis, and I don't think you will find any simple explanation that will fit it. So I had a look at map dowsing, then medical dowsing, and the biochemic remedies. As far as headaches are concerned, I find they can be cured far more quickly by these remedies, than by using aspirin. Last year I came across healing and was completely shattered, this being one of the things I never expected to work, but I hadn't expected dowsing to work either, and was puzzled when it did. The difficulty is that we don't know what the limits are and mustn't put too much construction on what we do or say, because I think that in dowsing, orthodoxy must be out. Different people work in their various ways, and it is fascinating to watch outdoor exercise, but this doesn't mean any of the systems are wrong. They are purely personal and not subject to any hard and fast rules. My sister-in-law, for instance, can use a whalebone V-rod, but when she tries one of nylon, it refuses to work for her. This is not autosuggestion, because she expects it to work. This is why congresses are so valuable. We come together, find out what other members are doing, and afterwards try these things ourselves to see what happens, broadening our outlooks and avoiding mistakes. However, finally, I think we must make the difficult decision of where our particular line of country lies. Once you start dealing with scientists, you find you're against a peculiar set of people, although they think we're peculiar, and they put on their mental blinkers, straight away. I have a close friend, a statistician, who has a wide range of interests, including dowsing, whose opinion is that the only way to convince scientific people of the reality of dowsing, is by the use of statistics, and not by argument. Produce statistical evidence that this thing exists, and they will then accept it, providing sufficiently tight controls are placed on the experiment, which must be a repeatable one. After one long discussion, we agreed that someone sympathetic to dowsing must be found to set the experiment. He should firstly acclimatize himself to the experimental conditions and find out exactly what is involved, and when happy about it undertake the test run and take off the results. Just throwing someone to the lions is a good way of proving that dowsing doesn't work, and this has been the difficulty with tests carried out on TV programs where the dowser has been on the defensive. Personally, I don't do so well when on the defensive, and get all sorts of spurious results. Unless you can produce a scientific theory, which is absolutely watertight, it is likely to be demolished, because scientists work like this. One has only to look at the opposing established theories relating to the origin of the universe, to see the two sides are continually shooting each other down. Neither have been able to prove their case. When I come up against skeptics, I give them the facts to enable them to take a look at dowsing. If they're not convinced, then I conclude that it is a waste of time trying to convince anyone who has his eyes shut. There are none so blind as those who will not see. If we wish to convince scientists, perhaps, we should try statistics. They are hard to argue against them when properly employed. We must keep an open mind and look at everything in dowsing that comes up. I personally have benefited greatly from radiesthetic types of dowsing and healing. It is vital not to shut our eyes. This, I think, is the sin of orthodoxy, which we must be very careful to avoid.